Hello, hello. It is great to see you again, and welcome back to another installment of Advance Your Wealth with Homer Smith. I'm your host and moderator, Ryan Ruff. I'll be with you today. Of course, we've got Homer, the star of the show, joining us. He'll be on momentarily. But look, first and foremost, want to say thank you for finding your way back to the show, whether that be checking us out after the fact on a podcasting or streaming platform, or if you are with us live here today on the Facebook live stream, please feel free to chime in with a comment or a question. We'd love to hear from you live in real time. And of course, as always, Homer and I will carve out some time at the end of our discussion to answer some of those questions and comments that might come along throughout the show today. But look, want to set the scene for what we're talking about today. As you probably know, if you've joined us for past conversations, succession planning. It's come up a lot in our conversations with Homer, and it's a bit, it's a pretty big facet of what he and the team over at Convergent Wealth Partners are doing day in and day out. So today we're really going to get into the weeds of it, truly succession planning for family businesses. As you know, again, from past conversations, family business, family wealth, there's a lot of sticky dynamics that can come into play. So when you throw in the family business coupled with this, the strategies and the concepts surrounding succession planning, boy, can that be a tightrope to walk sometimes. So luckily we've got Homer and his experiences to lean on, and I'm excited to jump into this conversation and learn more about the topic and obviously provide some value to you guys out there in the audience. So that being said, let's go ahead and bring Homer on to get the conversation rolling. Homer, how you doing today? Good to see you.
I'm well, Ryan. Good to see you as well.
Hey, always looking forward to being on the show with you. We have some good conversations every time we get together. And today, Homer, I think it's easy to start by saying, hey, families, boy, can conflicts arise and really just wreak havoc on some family-run businesses when those conflicts do arise. And so when we're looking at this concept of succession planning for family businesses, let's just have you start the day with kind of a high-level overview. How important is succession planning overall when there's a family business in the picture?
Yeah, assuming that the family wants to pass that family business on to the next generation, the succession planning component is pretty critical. If there's not a solid succession plan in place, it often leads to a lot of challenges within the family, family conflict, which obviously then could lead to down the road a lot of challenges with the business financially. And, if those conflicts got to the level of ultimately even potentially bringing the business into some serious financial trouble, that's going to potentially have some serious financial implications on the family and can really cause irreparable harm to the relationships within that family. So, succession planning is important for any business, really, in terms of how that owner wants to transition out. But within family businesses themselves, it's, I would say, even more important.
So, Homer, let me ask you this then: how can a family with a business assess even in the first place their need for succession planning? How do they go about deciding whether or not there's a need?
Well, again, I think the need is obvious no matter what. I think
Okay.
what really it comes down to is the process of putting it into place, and how technical they want to get in terms of putting things in writing to try to eliminate that dissent amongst the family. So, some of the issues they need to realize in terms of how maybe urgent the process is how close or not is that current managing generation to moving on out of the business. And some of the big questions they got to answer is, do they want this business to stay in the family, or is it to a point from a value perspective that they might want to consider selling to an outside party? I know that can often be taboo within family businesses to consider, but it is still something that each family business needs to at least look at, depending on where we are in the market and in the business cycle. The other issues a lot of times with family businesses is you have family members working within the business, and is that next generation really ready to step up to the plate to manage the business? And if not, how are you going to get them ready, or how are you going to mitigate that with potential outside managers? And then, what's going to happen between the next generation of inheritors, those that are in the business and those that aren't within the business. So, how do we deal with, again, that whole concept of family harmony that we've discussed, from a succession planning standpoint, family constitution standpoint, from other conversations? How do we try to ensure family harmony is continued throughout the process?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because family harmony really is the most important thing when it comes to everything that goes throughout this succession planning process within a family business. So There's a lot to consider there, Homer. So, in order to maintain that family harmony, and that being said, how do you get started? How should a family with a business, that's knows that process, that succession planning process is coming? How do you get started? Where do you begin this succession planning?
Yeah, I think that the most important starting point is we have to think of succession planning as being flexible. I think oftentimes people can get too caught up in trying to design the perfect plan given the current tax environment, legal environment, whatnot. But it's really important, a family business that's going to survive multiple generations has got to be able to deal with these constant changes we're going to see in the environment within the family and all of that. So, it still needs to be well designed. It needs to be as clear on what the objectives of the business and what the family are, but still having that flexibility is really important. So, it needs to look across all the generations. It needs to identify, what are the different roles of the different family members going to be, and then it needs to be able to be delivered to the family in a concise way where everybody can get a good understanding of it. And so the use of things like family meetings that we've discussed before is critical to making sure that everybody understands what their role is. And oftentimes within these family businesses, you've got non-family members that are key management level and executive level members of the team, and they need to understand what the goal of the family is and what the succession plan is, because there's always a risk when you do transfers from one generation to the next that you're going to lose key people. And so the better you can communicate the plan and the more clear it is for those executives as well, the less likely they are to leave. And if they are going to leave, you can at least plan for it.
Yeah, such a really important thought there with the employees, and the last thing you want to do is ruffle feathers there and and lose valuable pieces of the business, those people that have maybe been with the company 10, 20, 30 years that and trust. So it sounds like to me, Homer, that this idea of transparency is paramount throughout this process. So talk to me about this idea of transparency and why that really does play such an important role in trying to maintain that family harmony and avoid, the fighting among family members when maybe it doesn't need to exist in the first place.
Most well-designed succession plans don't just deal with the business itself and specific to management succession. They really are all about fostering family harmony, and that really comes from that transparency that you spoke to. The next generations, the younger generations, if they feel like they're just being told what's going to happen and don't have the opportunity to provide their input, even if they're not the decision maker at that point, without that ability to at least provide their input, discuss their concerns, the likelihood of things leading down the road to at the very least more distrust or disharmony within the family, or worse, lawsuits, when things don't go the way that they would have wanted and they didn't feel they had a voice. So, having a proper succession plan in place that's well communicated to the family, where everybody feels they at least had a voice, is at least going to lessen that likelihood. Now, there's no guarantee that even doing that process is going to eliminate any future types of lawsuits and family distrust or anything like that, but it's definitely going to dramatically reduce the likelihood of it.
Oh yeah, certainly. And so family harmony there, Homer, being obviously a really big part of this whole equation and in the successful succession, plan. Beyond that family harmony, how does, in your eyes, a well-crafted succession plan really address those technical issues behind the family business?
Yeah, there's a lot going on with any private business, and obviously family business with the additional family dynamics are always there. But in terms of technical issues that you're always dealing with are things like taxes. And so how are taxes going to come into play when it comes to a generational transfer, from whether it's inherited or buying and selling within the family, all of those components, taxes play a big role. And so how are you going to mitigate those and reduce those as much as possible? One we kind of touched on already is just the competency. So, where are the various family members who are involved in the business at in their readiness to keep the business thriving and surviving into the next generation? Some of the other issues that are going to need to be dealt with are, what's the financial situation of those that are going to be maybe playing bigger roles within the family business? If a family member is in financial trouble and is now, whether intentionally or just from lack of great planning now heavily involved in the management of the business or responsible for it, there's a lot of risk for how they might mismanage the funds within the business. And then, other things that are harder sometimes to talk about, but how might future divorces impact the business? So, next generation has their ownership of the business, they get divorced, and that spouse, if again, proper planning isn't done, may have a bigger say within the business than the family wants. And so even thinking ahead to things like that are important as a part of the succession plan.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Massive, massive factors to really incorporate here. Homer, given all those goals and, of course, issues that you just mentioned, what advice might you have for just taking all of that into account and then getting them into that formalized actual plan on paper?
Yeah. One of the key components of any good succession plan is it has to be written down, has to be on paper, and it has to be spelled out in a way that the next generation can clearly understand. And so, that comes in a number of different ways. There's what we call collective documents. That's going to be things like shareholder agreements, the operating agreement for the business, things that are specifically related to the operating of the business itself. And then there's the personal documents that are going to help codify a lot of this, which is things like the estate plan, so wills, trust, things of that nature. They're going to spell out how the business is inherited to that next generation. So again, the key component to all of this is that it can't just be discussed. It's got to be something that's actually written down and communicated well to the rest of the family.
Sure. So that's obviously a big part of it. But then, Homer, I feel like there would be some issues that then creep in, that can at least creep into the scene. Is the issue of making sure that the family plan, that succession plan, is adhered to over time. So beyond not just the initial transfer, but maybe transfers thereafter. So talk to me a little bit about this idea and importance, really, of making sure the plan is adhered to over time, staying relevant.
Yeah, definitely need to keep in mind for family business owners that it's one thing to craft these succession plans, even if you have them in writing, they're well documented and communicated throughout the family. Unfortunately, while these legal structures can be in place, they can't guarantee that things won't come up in the future and that family members won't fight over how the succession plan is actually being implemented. And even if things are well documented and the likelihood of those lawsuits being able to make any changes are very low, just the cost of navigating those lawsuits and the distrust or the disharmony they create can have a significant impact on the business for a long period of time. So, unfortunately, even if you do a good job of this, you're not necessarily guaranteeing a perfect outcome.
Yeah, I mean, you can put the effort there, but at the end of the day, everybody's got to be on the same page to make sure that that succession plan is truly adhered to. So, final question, Homer, as I'm kind of, we're bringing the conversation to a head here. What do you believe families should do once they've got it? Once the succession plan is in place, what do they do to make sure that things stay smooth once it's there in front of them?
And I think another recurring theme that we have on this show quite often is this idea of stress testing. And so, succession planning, just like planning for most other goals that you might have, is not a one-time event. Tax laws change, estate planning laws change, a lot of things change. The family dynamics change over time. So the succession plan needs to be regularly addressed, the assumptions need to be reviewed, and the assumptions need to be reviewed in terms of, are they going to result in the outcome that the family is looking for within that business? So a regular conversation around this and the use of things like family meetings, whether it's annually or at least every couple of years, the succession plan should be discussed, should be reviewed, and should be stress tested to make sure that it's still going to result in the outcome that the family is looking for.
Yeah, I mean, there's too much changing within our world for this to be a one size fit all succession plan. I mean, there's factors are going to inevitably change, and those regular meetings and making sure that this is ebbing and flowing and really adhered to over time. I mean, that can be paramount to making sure that the other factor that we mentioned at the beginning, the family harmony, really stays in play. Homer, I guess I got a bonus little question for you. If anybody out there in our audience who's with us today, maybe they are going through something similar themselves. Maybe they have a friend, a family member who is kind of approaching maybe this process of building a succession plan. Maybe they're interested in reaching out to you and your team to start a conversation, maybe get some advice overall. How would they best go about reaching out to you and your team to get that conversation started?
I mean, the easy answer, obviously, they can email me anytime at homer@convergentwealth.com. Be happy to start that conversation. And really, the bigger picture really is that they should be looking at a lot more than just the succession plan, and that's just one component of the overall plan for them. And really is looking at the business itself. What stage in the life cycle of the business are they? Are they in growth mode? Are they in kind of sustaining mode? Are they needing to add different ideas into the business to help it grow more? So the succession plan is just one of the areas that we can help them review as a part of the process, and it really goes much beyond just the succession plan. That is important that they be stress testing and taking a look at.
Awesome. All right. Well, Homer, hey, really appreciate you carving some time out of your busy day to be with us to talk through succession planning for family businesses. And I'm looking forward to having you back and getting into another conversation down the road.
Thanks, Ryan. It's always good to be here, and always excited to bring some of these complex ideas to the table for our clients and for those in the audience, and hope just spark some conversations and spark some ideas that you all can be doing to move you towards your optimal financial world and living that amazing life of significance that we're hoping all of our clients can attain.
I love that. Well, hey, that's why we're here, and we're going to keep it rolling. But thank you so much, Homer. And look, we want to take one final moment to thank you, of course, our audience, for jumping aboard with us today on the show. If you liked what you saw, you liked what you heard, please comment, subscribe to the show on whichever platform you're checking us out on, and then, of course, share this information. Just like Homer just mentioned, these conversations are for you. We want to help optimize your financial world, allow you to live that amazing life of significance, and we've got a lot of great conversations teed up that we would hate for you to miss out on. So that being said, for Mr. Homer Smith, I'm Ryan Ruff. We're saying so long, and we thank you so much for joining us on today's edition of Advance Your Wealth.